the way you do that is you first go here. You go to regenera.city, and this is the website for the city where you're going to be able to learn about the story. You're going to meet some of our characters, like Ava and Gloria. They will welcome you, and then you'll be able to meet Antonio de los Huertos and like many other characters. And then you can go to the Launchpad, and from the Launchpad you'll be able to access our two virtual worlds. One of them is Mora, the Museum of Regenerative Art, that has many of the projects of Design Science Studio in this virtual environment called Neo Art City. You're going to be able to explore it from your browser. You don't need anything special in your computer. And you will be able also to explore Topia. Topia is our virtual world where you can access Regenera, and from there you can access the four neighborhoods of Regenera, which are the Village, Agora and Bakislav, the Art District, and Natura. And I'm gonna take you, I think, to the Art District, which is one of my favorites, and give you a really small tour. But I'm gonna put this in the chat so you can join me if you want. So if you click in there, you'll be able to just put here your name, accept everything that it asks you to accept. I'm gonna change my name, I'm Nico, and I'm gonna enter the world, and I'm gonna get in there. And so you'll see this little character, and with the arrows of your keyboard, or just by clicking on this stage, you will be able to walk around and enter this magnificent world. And in here, you'll find many of the projects of the Design Science Studio Revolutionaries. This is so much fun. There are like very complex worlds that you can explore. This is one of my favorite parts. This is the Regenaissance Cabaret. It's a super fun thing. Let me zoom out a little bit so you see it completely, but this is one of my favorite spots to hang out at. Then you have all these projects that you can explore and click on. If you see a little arrow, it means you can click, and then that will either take you to a website or to a video or to something else. You're gonna be able to see some of the art. Oh, that is leading us to Togetherland, one of our favorite projects. Fred. And so the fun thing also, if any of you are coming, I don't know if you have clicked on the link, but if you're coming here, I'll go try to find you. Because if you run into people, you can talk to them and they'll show up in your screen, and you can, one of the most fun things that I have done is to explore these worlds with people, and you can dance with them. You'll see the screen and you can talk to them, and it feels a lot like Burning Man. And oftentimes I've been roaming around until like late at night with some friends and just exploring the different things that are. Oh, look! Hi, Julian. Let me go talk to you. See, when you get closer. Oh, he's still entering. There you are. Hi, friend. Okay, hey. Okay. Follow me. Let's explore. See, now you can all go together and do a little exploration. If you get a little too apart, the video will disappear, but as long as you're close, you'll be able to hear each other. We're in this shipwreck that belongs to Mel. Oh, I wish you had met Mel Andringa. He's one of my favorite characters. And oh, here we're coming to a really, really fascinating place. This is the Vision Train. Choo-choo! Look at this magnificent Vision Train that was designed by Harris. Isn't it fun? So with that, I'm gonna disappear into this portal. And I invite you all to come and explore Regenera. There are 5 different cities, neighborhoods. Let me put you in there. You can get there from the Launchpad, but if you wanna go to the Launchpad directly, you can enter the Regenera deck, and from there you'll have access to the 4 other neighborhoods and just walk around with your headphones on. There's music. There's different things occurring in there. There's many projects to explore. It's just a really fun place to be in. And so yeah, just check the links in the chat, become a citizen, explore the worlds, contribute when you can. We're waiting for you. We're ready to play. Thank you for being here with me. And let me see who's coming next to continue this celebration. Is it John? John, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. And we're thank you for that view into Regenera.
Yes, so welcome.
And our next highlight is going to visit with Brian, because Brian is a visionary, and he's actually, I've worked with him on projects together, and he believes that once unlocked, the power of imagination can manifest anything. He's taken his life's work of multiple disciplinary experience, woven it to who he is today: an Imagineer, community instigator, poetic philosopher, transmedia visionary, transformational futurist, metaconnector, and creative technologist. His noble purpose is defined by who we are and why we're here. It's to bridge the gap between imagination and reality within the physical and virtual worlds. And this is something we've embraced in Regenera. If you've experienced the news of Regenera is different. But Brian has helped us bridge this gap between our imaginations and our realities. So Brian, can you explain more of your process and your thought, your being, your project?
You know, it's interesting. One of the things I always like to say is short and simple, almost like I want to say I make cool shit. And I say that in a funny way, just because really we're all pretty amazing, every single one of us in this group. And before I talk about my project, I just wanted to say a few things about this group in general, because my project means the world to me, and I'm guessing so does every single one in this Regenera. Their life's passion. I'm not even going to call it a project. I'm going to call it their life's passion, because that's really what does it justice. But I'm sure their life's passion is so important. They understand the fact that we come together as citizens to develop these things with each other is probably the most remarkable, important thing of what we are doing here, for me at least. I find that imagination can only be unlocked when we have other people around us who will support us in the beauty that we do and the beauty that we create. It takes a community to do everything, unless, of course, you have multiple personalities and maybe you are a community within yourself, which could be helpful sometimes in the creative process. I find myself always creating different characters inside of my own head to sort of bring me outside of a thought process, and I will design it as someone else. I feel that it's a very necessary way of creating. It's actually a way that I give people as sort of a process, or what's the good word? Sorry, I'm losing my thoughts for a second. It's an exercise. That's the word, an exercise. How could I forget that word? It's an exercise in creating something called the spiritual warrior. And the spiritual warrior is basically who you are outside of who you are. So if you imagine yourself being something else, what would that be? So if you all stand by and have some patience, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually look up my definition of what my spiritual warrior is, because I find it very relative. And one of the funny things about presentations, and I find that it's the most necessity for me to actually convey who I am and what I am, is I usually kind of just make them on the spot. So all of my presentations come from my heart. So if I lose track for a moment, please forgive me. But I felt that in order for me to truly express what I'm doing, for people to believe truly in what I'm doing, I have to know it so well that I don't necessarily need a presentation, but can actually say it coming from the heart and mind of my actual emotions. So if you all stand by for 1 second, I'll pull up this link, which is actually my Connected Experience Discord server. And I have a section on here for people to actually come up with their spiritual warriors. So I wrote mine as the example. And this is what it is. I am the last dragon king. The dragon, a mythical creature, both good and bad, depending on the culture, but in hindsight, a lonely creature. And in some cases, protecting a treasure with no use, but just to own. In my life as now the last king of the dragons, I see a need for change, to bring everyone together in peace, use my power, the power of the dragons, to protect everyone that does not have our strength. And in turn, we also gain back the love we have never known. So that is me, the last dragon king. So what I suggest to everyone, the importance of coming up with their own spiritual warrior is to show in words or even acting or even just however you portray yourself as this person and become it. It's just a really powerful experience. And I find the creation is just amplified by being someone else. And it's really helpful sometimes, especially if you got a little bit of a block in creating. So just a little bit about my project. And I want to thank you for that beautiful introduction, John, or sorry, Francesco. Francesco, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. One of the things I thought that was really important when I wrote that introduction for the presentation was I took it straight from a corporate website called LinkedIn. So in Regenera, although we have more of a protopia now, before we had this thing called LinkedIn, which was the corporate world of how we actually connected with people outside of our friends and family, but more in the business world. And that passage of my description is what I have as my title and my about section of my LinkedIn, because I really wanted to show people that just because you're in the corporate world doesn't necessarily mean you can't be yourself. I remember this time and time again because it's so important for me to actually be me. I can't put a mask on. Wherever I am, I have to be who I am. So I decided as an experiment, and it seemed to work out pretty good. An experiment would be, I would actually write that in the most corporate of corporate websites where people go to look for people's credentials when they wanted to hire them for these things we had where we had to actually make money back then and get paid for jobs before we actually lived together in symbiotic relationships where we all helped each other. But I put it in a place where I believed a lot of people are afraid, and something really remarkable happened. People actually looked at me, talked to me with a different kind of respect, a respect that, wow, he really lives what he does. And that's very important. And I find that a lot of people actually open up to that, which is so critical, because in order for us to really create what we want, whatever it is, we have to be in a place where we can actually be comfortable with who we are to create these beautiful emotions that are us. So the connected experience is a bridge between the physical and virtual realities. I came up with this idea, I think when I was born, actually. I can't even remember. This is a really funny story because I've always been a science fiction minded person. I came up with the actual idea of doing the connected experience though in 2014 when I worked on a Burning Man project called the Mens Amplio. And the Mens Amplio was a large head with a brain tree on the inside. And this brain tree was designed by me, and it was a sculpture that was actually controlled by brainwaves. So you put an EEG headset on, and the output of your brain controlled the sculpture. The idea behind it was beautiful. My friend Don Kane is the lead artist and came up with the idea of the project itself. We were in all sorts of beautiful publications and news articles. And the intention of this was much, much more than Burning Man. It was actually to teach science through art. One of the unfortunate things back then in the Bay Area, education was one of the things that hurt the most. And public schools didn't necessarily have budgets for things like science and art. You would think science and art, probably two of the most important things on the planet, would be included in public education, grades kindergarten through 6, but unfortunately, so many schools didn't have it. So his intention for this sculpture was actually a very large piece of art to show science through brainwaves in a very simple and powerful way through a large-scale sculpture. How powerful you really are, and to take it to schools to teach this science through art as a kind of STEAM education idea. And STEAM is science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. It's an acronym for a new way of teaching, which I'm really about. And unfortunately, one of the things about Burning Man projects is they're very hard to sort of put back together again and again and again and again. We all know this, who has ever been to this place. The playa is not always nice to your projects. Luckily, when they survive, they are able to be shown again, but they're not as easily put together. So unfortunately, the idea of bringing it to schools was a little hard. So I was able to put it back up again in another space, kind of temporarily, permanently. And I had this thought, I'm like, it would be really interesting. And virtual reality wasn't as popular in 2014, and it was a much more larger price range to get into. So it was kind of on hold, but I thought to myself, how cool would it be if I was to put something like a 360 camera inside of this sculpture, this men's ampio, large head sculpture, and I was able to share this 360 view with anyone on the planet. And what they could do is they can actually put a VR headset on, or at least whatever was equivalent to then, and be inside of it. And not to mention, put on an EEG headset. We use the Mindwave from NeuroSky, and put on this headset and be able to actually have their brain, wherever they were located in the world, connect through what we call a WebSocket through the internet, and actually create a reaction on the sculpture, just like it did in Burning Man. And then, of course, one more step would be to actually allow people who connect it this way to be able to play with the software. We used a Raspberry Pi. It's a microcontroller, a small $35 computer. And imagine being able to actually program through learning, seeing your brain waves connect to the sculpture, and the sculpture itself, where it lived in its temporary permanent location, would actually react at the same time. So although I came up with the idea of the connected experience in 2014, it wasn't really called the connected experience. It was just really a way of showing the beauty of what I did with this project to the rest of the world and sharing the way to connect to it. So of course, over time, I've worked on many different art projects and community building and all sorts of fun technology and ancient wisdom kind of connections. And then we got hit with a very interesting and very sad event. It was the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And I was explaining before about the story of Unity Sanctuary, which was the first virtual reality world I developed in a place called AltSpace. AltSpace is a Microsoft platform where you can actually design whatever you want in Unity to a certain kind of specification and upload it. And it instantly has game mechanics built into it. And you could put a virtual reality headset on and go inside of it and explore like you would in virtual reality as a full game developer. So the idea came to me after that idea I had in 2014 about creating this connected experience. And then I thought to myself, wait a second. When I first started to learn how to do 3D modeling, I designed what looked like a very large tunnel. And this very large tunnel was going to be a much more simpler sculpture than it turned out in the 3D modeling that you'll see in the video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off just a minute, so you can see some stuff. This is the tunnel right here. This tunnel actually was a lot more simple. All of those, what look like Voronoi pattern, which is a very algorithmic, organically grown mathematical equation, were more rectangle screens. And the idea for this 40-foot long, 20-foot tall sculpture was to create a space for people at Burning Man to play music and to gather and to be a stage for some groups who may have not had the ability to get to Burning Man due to whatever circumstances they had in life, and for us to support 10 days worth of musicians to play with inside this tunnel to show the beauty of the world, what Burning Man is. So I created the 3D model in 2011, actually, or 2012, when I first started learning 3D modeling. And then, of course, in the end of 2020, I realized the connected experience. I can actually take this tunnel idea that I designed, wrap it around with the thought process I had with the idea for the men's amplia with the virtual reality, and take all of this different kind of storytelling that I've created over time and integrate it into one large immersive art piece that in essence would be a bridge between the physical and virtual reality worlds to connect people all over the world. And the idea for the connected experience is the same. Use the biofeedback, either brainwave sensors or HRV, which is heart rate variance. The Apple Watch is an HRV device. A very unknown fact about the Apple Watch, and there's a very interesting news article about this, is there was one case where this HRV found a very undetectable anomaly within inside of someone. And it actually was a precursor red flag to what a heart attack would be. And they were able to get this person to the hospital in time before they had a heart attack. So this person's Apple Watch saved their life. So this is why these technologies are so important. These technologies are so important because they are getting much cheaper in price, and they're very fundamentally, they have a very big fundamental positive impact on people in general. And so much information done in a very trusting way, if shared, could help so many different people. So I can take all this technology, put it into the communication, into these environments where your biofeedback actually takes and resonates sound in the spaces, resonates visuals in the spaces. And you've seen the different visuals by the little sparklings of electricity, like in this sculpture coming up here right now, which I brought to Burning Man in 2017. It's called Life Within Itself, made of hexagons. That is an actual sculpture I brought to Burning Man. Of course, it wasn't 20 feet tall like in here. It was only 6 feet tall, but it was a memorial that I created for my father, who passed away in 2017. It's a sculpture made completely from brass and red oak. And luckily I had the 3D model. I was able to throw it in there, but those visualizations you see on there, those sparklies, that electricity is kind of an effect we can have of fractals coming from your mind and sound effects going along with it. And this would be the communication tool with people all over the world. And the beautiful thing about this too is these sculptures would exist and will exist in science museums globally. So the idea is to have a physical reality sculpture at the same time that this is a digital twin of, to connect both environments. So when you walk into it, either environment, the physical or virtual realities, you can actually have this communication with someone else in real time in every single dimension. And I feel it's really important to do this because one of the fears that a lot of people have with the metaverse and with virtual reality is people are going to want to stay in there forever. It's going to become Ready Player One. Everyone's kind of scared about this, and I don't blame them, actually, from what I've seen in the industry. And we really need to come together as a community, because in Regenera, we fixed these problems. But in the year 2022, we still face these as a fundamental problem. So we need to come together to help mold what all these things are. So I figured, what better way than to show both beauty inside and outside? If someone is in an environment where the sculpture exists, they can go to the physical sculpture, which they can also go inside the physical sculpture, see maybe monitors, or in some very fun ways, fog machines with lights and mirrors where we can actually project holograms, and people in virtual reality would be floating in front of them. Now, this technology, even for 2022, isn't that difficult. One of the things I've realized over time, working in technology so long as I have, is technology is so far beyond what we use it for. And the one sad fact is a lot of people don't even realize what it can do. And we need to actually leverage that in an artistic capacity in order to guide its path. This is what a futurist does. A futurist actually sees these things understands them, does something called speculative design or speculative science, and predicts what's going to happen with something based on a modern day understanding. So what I've done here with the connected experience is I've created this beautiful world, these beautiful designs, this communication of the mind and the heart with the belief. I believe because there needs to be no hope, because I know this will happen in some state, in some form. But people need to be excited about these technologies, at least in some format. We need to show how positive they are. So what the connected experience does is it helps for the mass adoption of these things that I see in the future as being the most important things we have. And one of the things I'd like to see is develop an entire new education programs. One of the things I find that is kind of sad in so many different ways is one of the things that's the most important thing on the planet, education, is one of the things that's one of the least funded and one of the least kind of respected in so many different ways, because teachers really work hard. I know this because I only really had one teacher who really believed in me. That's another long story, but it's just so hard to be able to do something with no resources, or at least very little resources, and mold young minds, which is what teachers do. So I'd like to take it back to the world where we actually use storytelling as teaching. And what better way to do storytelling than in environments like this, like the connected experience and what we're coming up to next, which is the Unity Sanctuary again. So what I've done also is I created an entire lore and mystery and science fiction superhero origin stories based on all of the sculptures that I've done. So not only when we're teaching the science about it, we can actually teach it through storytelling in a fictional way, which is actually possible. So what I did was I came up with a group of superheroes called the Sacred Six. And the Sacred Six are 6 individuals who, through some traumatic state in their life, realized or came to the realization of a genetic anomaly inside of them to where they had superpowers. And what they did was they found these realizations through modern day technology. So I wrote stories around that for that, just to show people the power of that. I based them on people in my life. I base them on ordinary average people. And I don't say that in a very light way. Ordinary average people are us. We are very special. We are very special. But I didn't make superheroes that were blonde hair, blue eyes, or however they looked. They weren't the most beautiful people in the world. Of course, they are the most beautiful people in the world because of the beauty of who they are. So I created these characters for people to actually not look up to, but look in the same eyes with. I feel that's one of the most important things when it comes to helping and mentoring. One of the things I like to say too is sometimes we need to knock people off their pedestal, people who think they may be above someone else. And we stand, us true leaders, stand on the ground with them, eye to eye, and look at them and say, this is who I am. This is what I do. I believe in myself because someone else believed in me. Now I believe in you. What is it that you want to do? Whatever it is. And this is the beautiful thing about living in a place like Regenera. In Regenera, we all come together as a community. And one of the beautiful things about that is we all support each other in whatever we do. This is called symbiosis. And with symbiosis in the Regenera, at least the way I see it, we all support each other in whatever beauty that we want to do. No one is like saying you have to be a doctor, or you have to be a teacher, or you have to be a mathematician, or you have to be a gardener, or you have to be this, that, or the other thing. We're asked as children, what do you want to be? I find it's the most important thing. I've learned this from a friend of mine who I met on my first Burning Man. My first Burning Man, I was actually one of the leads and helped design the temple in 2010, the Burning Man Temple of Flux. So I feel that it's so important for not only us to teach the younger generation, but for them to teach us too. So in humbleness, I asked the kids, what do you want to learn? And, you know, my friend was telling me about the story of this is how she teaches in New York. And the kids come up with some pretty remarkable things. They don't come up with, you know, things that may or may not be useful, although useful is just a relative term because everything really is useful if you believe in it or it means something to your heart. But they came up with really appropriate things and remarkable for people of the ages of maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. And I feel that if we give the power to these children, that we can truly raise individuals who will help create what I have in the back of me right now. And the idea for education, not only teaching things like language and history, but to also teach things like design. One of the things I remember thinking to myself, as someone once said, or a few times once said, vocational school, and almost in a way where it didn't sound very good. Vocational school is where you learn to be maybe a mechanic or a carpenter. It's a very important thing because vocational school is how we build. And I would really love to see us take vocational to the next highest level, just under education being as important, and show people how to create what I just did. And the idea is to create a whole entire educational program based on first learning how to do 3D modeling. Ask kids, what do you want to make? You have the space, you could do whatever you want. Let's start by teaching you the tools of how to do it, because there's certain ages where you can't put the headset on, the VR headset, because of your eyes being developed. So from 6 to 9, maybe we just teach kids how to build really cool things and make art very important. So those ages 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 through 12, we teach design or whatever they want to learn. It's really up to them, but we include art because it's very important. And by the time 12 hits and they can actually go into a virtual reality environment, they can bring these things into VR and do exactly what I did, bring something into Unity and upload it to a platform like AltSpace. And then from there, what they could do is they can actually fly like I am doing right now through this world. They can fly through it. Could you imagine being 12 years old, creating your imagination, then putting on a virtual reality headset and being able to fly through your own space? I think that when I was a kid in the 1970s would have been like, oh my, that's exactly what I want to do. Of course I did it because my imagination was pretty wild, but that would be exactly what I would want to do. So the idea is design this in virtual reality, fly around in it. And when you become a young adult, guess what? You now have critical skills, vocational skills, where you can actually go outside in the physical world and build these things. And not just sculptures. We're talking about a whole entire self-sustainable community based on art. Why make the architecture kind of plain in some cases when they do, when you can actually design every single one of these structures based on what your imagination is? And the perfect example of that is coming up right here, right behind me right now in a second. And the fact that I took architectural design and created an entire virtual reality platform out of it based on something that you can actually live in. So really, that is my connected experience. I don't want to talk too much. I joke around. I'm a Jew from New York. I could probably go on forever. So I will definitely respect the time. And if it's time to pass the torch, I will. If there's time to talk more, I can, probably forever. That's the joke.
Brian, you are so loved and you're so celebrated for all that you bring. It is time, it is time, but this will not be the last time we will hear from you, Revolutionary of Revolutionaries.
Yeah, Brian, it's really something. You are a gift to this community. Every time I turn around, you've offered yourself in one way or another, through your philosophies, through your artwork, through your knowledge of VR. And it's just been such a joy to see how you integrated and befriended and offered as much as you have. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. My wife has another word for that. She calls me a schmuck for it. But of course she loves me and she knows that this is my passion.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you all. I really love you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now we have a very, very special event, an integration, a speed networking, and we have Liv here to help us nurture our relationships. Liv is a multidisciplinary project manager and systems thinker who works within and outside of existing systems to nurture their capacity towards ecological, social, and individual healing. Liv, welcome. Take us, weave us, have fun with us.
Exactly. Thank you. I'm so excited. Thanks for this opportunity. And thank you so much, Brian. That was a really beautiful talk. And yeah, thanks for all the artwork that's happening around me right now. Yeah, so I'm really excited. I hope y'all are excited to do some networking, connect with people, spark with people, So before we get started, the way I was gonna plan on structuring things, because in my experience, it's all about you all connecting and it's less about listening to me talk. And so I want to maximize opportunities for everyone to chat with each other. So I'm thinking that the rooms will be 5 minutes. And instead of doing like a talk back after each breakout room, just like pour your love and connection that you just had in that moment into the chat. And either I'll read out things or we'll just like move into the next networking opportunity. So maximize opportunities for diversity. Yeah, Stroopy, we can do Bliss. Can we do 6 minutes?